focus on who you can do your venture with, like finding the right person. And we've been fortunate enough to, have each other since we were very young, is to find a person that thinks like you and that you can think like, all right, I basically want to marry this person, and we want to create something together. I think sharing the ups and the downs with someone is so much easier than doing it on your own. And I'm only speaking from a personal standpoint here, because I know that when we've had downs, we've gone through it together. And same thing, we've had really high highs. You can share it with someone, and you've got someone there that's experiencing it all with you.
Yeah, we'll golden, baby girl, we'll golden. They're about to see us shine, 'cause we're golden. They can't ever break us.
Hey guys, just before we head into the episode, if you have been enjoying the podcast, please make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're using, whether you're using Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever it is that you're using. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button. It really does help us out a lot. It obviously means more people will be able to see and trust our content. It also means that you'll get that content every week, and we really do appreciate all the support, all the shares, all the likes, all the comments, all the messages that we get. It does help us and spurs us on to keep providing more value and deliver quality content to you guys. So a massive thank you. Lisandro, Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Good to be here.
I was with our mutual friend Reese a few weeks back.
Reese boy.
He almost got me into a bit of trouble.
Yeah.
He always does.
But he was kind of getting me amped for this. We're lucky enough to have another mutual, my partner, Liv.
Yep.
And she, when she said that she had locked you guys in, I've been, I'm going to be honest, I've been thinking about this for a little while, because I'm excited to hear the story and share it with the community. But I guess where we'll start is, I'd love for you two guys to give a bit of insight about yourselves, and a little bit about Elite 11 as well, and then we can dive into the journey and kind of pick it apart a little bit.
Yeah, easy. Well, I think Ben and we've known each other our whole lives. So we started school together in prep, and we were close from a very young age. Funny enough that we were born 3 days apart at the same hospital, which we didn't know at the time, obviously being 5 years old.
Wow.
We learned this later on in middle school when we were really, really close. But yeah, we grew up together. We got really close in middle school. I think we had similar interests. We both had a love for sport. He played hockey nationally for Australia growing up. And
Grass hockey?
Don't
Grass
plug
hockey?
me like that. Field hockey, yeah.
Field hockey. I played that at school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was a footy boy though, so I was the kind of rough guy that
Good.
got angry when you couldn't touch people. And
I
shit.
like that. I would have used you to ruffle some feathers, but yeah. We were really into sport. We would run around the Marby River 2-3 times a week. That was 4K. Sometimes we would go for the further run, 6K, and we would sort of push each other to be better. This was in middle school, like when testosterone hit and we were growing so rapidly.
I think we had one thing we had in common is we were pretty driven for that, and I think that's why we liked being around with each other. We just wanted to get it done. And I think that kind of carried forward as we left school, because we left school the year after, obviously first year uni. I remember Ben. I remember the day pretty well. Ben, we were out, and Ben's like, "Oh, yeah, I got to show you something." And he pulls his phone out, and it's the logo, and it's the Elite 11 logo that everyone sees today. And he's like, "Just imagine that sportswear." Us being pretty fit, we loved being sportswear at the time. I'm like, you don't have to say anything else. Like, I'm in. Like, without a doubt, I'm in. So
how old were you guys then?
We were 19, 18, turning 19. That was when we first started. But Elite 11 wasn't born.
I think we were 19. If we backtrack a little bit to like year 11 and 12 at school, we used to catch the bus together every day, and we used to like scheme, what can we do? We always wanted to, not be our own boss, but we wanted to create stuff. I remember a couple of things, like we wanted to do make a gym or a fitness studio sort of thing. And there was this weird one time where we were like, we want to be the next Powerade, and we want to make an electrolyte drink, stuff like that. So we would always be scheming on the bus home every day. And then walking, to each other's houses. We used to just talk shit, basically. So it stemmed from there. And then I guess in year 12, I realized that to start a gym, it would take a lot of money to get finance for a gym. We're talking probably 7 figures.
I'm going to give you props to that because that's not what I was thinking about it in year 12. I can give you the tip.
Yeah. So I realized that I was probably thinking too big at the time. So I was like, wow, what else can I do that I can start at a young age, and who can I do it with? And he was the guy. He was the guy that I went to. I turned to him. I said, let's do something, and we never looked back. So we were 19? So it was out of school.
Yeah, 19. And then towards the end of 2014 is when we actually launched Elite 11 after a lot of sampling going back and forward with manufacturers. And back then it was very different to, what AE is right now. We launched with a website, but the website, I don't know what you used for the website back then.
Yeah, I'm not going to plug them because the website's back then. So now you have big companies like Shopify and stuff like that run megalith companies and run basically 99% of every store online.
Yeah.
Back in the day, before Shopify got big, there were a lot of smaller players. We went with an Australian player. I won't plug them, but the website looked like shit. If you went on it now, you'd think we were looking at something from 2000, Windows XP.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to buy anything from there at the start. So we started from that standpoint where it wasn't that easy to create a brand because there was so much infrastructure that you needed to do and so much work that you needed to put in because it was just HTML, WordPress sort of thing.
Yeah. I think also the fact that since we were in the space of sports, the way we saw Elite 11 to begin with was to do soccer clubs and footy clubs. And
yeah.
so that's how we started. We would, go to these clubs and we would pitch the idea of, all right, we'll do the whole kit for the senior team, and we'll sponsor the club. And that's how we started. We would just go to these different clubs, and we realized quite quickly that probably wasn't going to be the way of the future. And there was one specific example I remember quite well. It was at the time we were 19. It was the biggest deal that we had gotten. We got to do the whole club. It was $70,000 in total. We did the training gear, the kits, all the way through to juniors to the seniors. And I remember that time when we would go get stock, we would go with his mum's SUV and my mum's SUV to Qantas Freight to go pick up the stock. So we'd go wait there while all these other freight forwarders were, coming in big semi-trailers, and we would go in the cars and grab all the stock, put it in the back of our cars, take it back to Ben's house, and, we're trying all the stuff out. And I remember when we got all the stuff, we're like, shit, like, this doesn't fit.
The fit was horrible.
The fit.
Oh, the fit.
Not on everything, but there were a
Yeah.
few standout products where I think because we were so young, we weren't anal about what we were doing and getting from the manufacturer.
Yeah.
And if with China, if you leave anything to chance or leave the door open for them to, interpret anything, it can go horribly wrong. And it did. So yeah, I guess that night we had to take the stuff to the club. So we did 4 round trips to this soccer club, which again we won't name who they were, but every time we would go back, we were like, "Fuck, are they going to try it on? Like, I hope they don't."
Yeah, let's get these drops done and
Yeah,
get the fuck out
we
of
need to get out of here. But the horrible thing was we never got the cash. So this was the way wholesale works is completely different to retail. Retail, you're taking $50 for a pair of tights, and then you're sending out the pair of tights. Like the transaction is before the customer gets the item, and then there's returns and stuff like that. With wholesale, it might be a 10% deposit up front, but the rest is credit terms, like classic traditional business.
Usually it's a bit more, but since our selling point was 10% deposit, because obviously we wanted to get these deals done.
We were going up against brands like Kappa, Adidas, Nike. No one knew who we were, so like we needed a point of difference at the end of the day, and a point of difference was we'll do it cheap just to get our foot in the door into the industry and then leverage that deal. But yeah, it didn't work well, and we ended up going for a meeting with the committee of the club. There was probably 7 or 8 people surrounding us on the huge table at the club, and
Oh shit!
These
you were
guys,
young too.
we were
mate.
19.
Poor guys.
19, and these guys are 50, 60.
Fuck.
Like these guys are veterans, and soccer club committees. They're European blokes who are pretty passionate about everything they do. And I remember this one guy, and I sort of had nightmares about it for quite a while. He basically said, you guys come in here and you've sort of like fucked us around. And then the one thing that I remember him saying is, anyone can put up a sign and say they have a clothing business. It doesn't make it so. And I sort of had nightmares about that because it's true. The barrier to entry for a clothing brand probably was a bit higher back then, but now you can, launch a brand and get merch and do everything pretty easily and quickly. So I guess that was one of the biggest lessons we learned from the very beginning.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we made many mistakes at that early period, as you do when you're 19 years old. I'm glad that we made it, because I think that's what pushed us. Going and trying to go into that space is what pushed us to try something else and really go 100% with e-commerce. And at that time, that's when Shopify started to really make some headwind. And you're like, it really, we were like, oh fuck, maybe we should, try getting a store on Shopify. So March 2016, we launched the Shopify the website on the Shopify platform, and that's the Elite 11 that everyone kind of knows today. But
that's our birthday, basically.
That's our birthday.
So we started earlier, but it wasn't the actual EE. It was like Diet EE, or however you want to look at it.
But back then, we only had men's products. Because again, it was just a way Ben and I could express ourselves, what we wanted to wear. We would always just be rolling around in trackies, and we wanted to change the fit and all that. So it was just what we wanted to wear. And while we were in that time frame of 2015/2016, we were both working at Samsung customer service. So we would work Samsung during the day, go to soccer or hockey training, or go to the gym, and then at night we would then go to back then we had a Kennett storage facility close to home, and it was an 80 square meter. Was it 80 square meters? It was
no. It was like less? 35, 40.
35, 40 square meters, and it was a dump. Like, we just chucked everything in there. We're not very organized, so we would go there. We'd do all the emails. We'd pack all the orders. Put all in boxes. We'd try organize what we've got, and try to figure out how much stock we've got in the warehouse, what we got coming in, and then from there we would take it to Ben's house and we would rinse and repeat. And we were doing that for a better part of 2 years, just constantly while we were working. And obviously we were doing part-time uni at the time. We had some of the biggest laughs at 2 a.m.
The golden days.
I look back at it now and I'm like, fuck, I would love to go back there and just have a laugh again like that. Obviously we can't, but we're better for it. But I look back at those days when we were in the storage units very fondly, because it was just you were in the weeds, and everything that was to do with it was completely reliant on what you were going to put in and your input. So he'd pick me up, or I'd pick him up at 11 p.m. at night, and we would just be scheming at 1 a.m. at night. Sometimes we wouldn't want to go to sleep. And you know how when you're at uni, you're sort of like in a completely different routine. You're not waking up at 6 a.m. You're waking up at 10:30.
Yeah.
And that was just our routine, 10:30 to 2 a.m. And we'd wake up, go to uni, be an absolute drop kick at uni, to be perfectly honest with you.
I feel like most business owners are. We can't be told what to do.
We absolutely sucked at that sort of aspect. But we sort of crawled through that, went to our training, went to gym together, and then when push came to shove, 11 p.m. at night, we went.
So when the party started.
Let's do it.
So fast forward now to today. I'd love to give a bit of an insight into where the business is at right now, and then what we can start to do from there is, I've got some kind of questions lined up of I guess trying to bring a lot of these lessons to life, and maybe we'll kind of go through the different. I feel like you kind of go through chapters in business, and we'll try to pick apart some of those chapters and some of the things that you guys did and didn't do that provide good lessons for the listeners at home. So where are you guys at now in terms of as a business?
So now as a business, we have quite a big online presence in Australia. Obviously, that's our main market. We have 2 retail stores, one in Chadstone Shopping Centre and one at High Point. And when 2020 hit, obviously COVID, the big influx of people coming in and shopping online, it was evident everywhere. Anyone that was online at the time before 2020 saw huge growth, and we were no exception. We saw huge growth in 2020. At the end of 2020, we realized, okay, like, there's so many players in the space. We need to kind of differentiate ourselves, and what can we do to do that? We had had already spoken to High Point previously because we always thought about doing a pop-up. They reached out to us and they're like, would you like to try a pop-up? So we thought, let's try blend the presence we have online with a retail space. And we can do this well, and we can actually do the fit-outs, a premium fit-out that can kind of have digital elements that represents what we are as a brand, which is an e-commerce brand, that it would have a point of difference. Also, the fact that people can come in, they try stuff on, they can see the same form of digital elements, or the assets that we use, the creatives that we use online, and they can see that in store as well. So it would be like one big seamless experience.
Omni-channel.
For sure.
So that's where we thought at the end of 2020 we would go down, and we've stuck with that. So now we've got, in total about 35, 40 staff, a lot of them at both of the stores. And it's just now is trying to build on what we've got now, because we do feel like we do have a very loyal customer base. We've recently, with the birthday, we usually do a big sale, and this time we did it exclusively on an app that we've just launched. We've just launched the Elite 11 app. And it's that's done really well. We're blown away by we had expectations, but we were really blown away with how much people just loved it.
I want to park that because we're going to dive into that, I reckon, at some stage, and the thought process behind that.
Yep.
But that's very cool. I'm very interested to talk about that. So I want to go, I guess, rewind back to before COVID. Obviously business isn't much about, sometimes you fall into a trend, right? Or being able to pick a future trend. You guys obviously, where were you guys at, obviously, before COVID hit as a company? Would you say you were still very infinite, or you would say you were kind of in chapter 2 or 3 or 4? Like, where would you guys say you were at that point? And then to follow up that, like, what were some of the things that you guys did early on that you look back at now and say, or even at the time you realized and thought, oh God, like there was like something you changed that had a dramatic influence in the, I guess, taking whatever that next step was, or seeing kind of rapid change? Yeah,
well, I think from 2016 when we did launch the Shopify store, we focused mainly on men's stuff. So like our biggest seller was men's joggers. And everyone wants joggers to go to the gym, train. So we were just pumping out joggers for 2 years straight. Mm-hmm. I remember us flirting the idea of women's, like going into the women's space. For two guys, it's freaking incredibly difficult. But we would consult, our sisters, our mums, friends, partners, stuff like that. And we would always get the same response from people that knew the space. And that was that the women's market is 4 times the size of the men's market. It's whether or not we would be able to execute the actual women's range, like we did with the men's range, and get women to buy into the brand. Because you already had big brands like Gymshark. Who else did you have back in the day? Anyway, you had big brands back in the day that were already excelling in this space. And I think that we decided to pull the trigger when mid or late
2018.
We launched 2018, but we pulled the trigger probably end of 2017 and started working on how we were going to get into the women's space. And I think that was probably the best decision we ever made, because there were 2 decisions on the table: double down on men's and try and be like the leader in the men's market, or expand into the female market and really try and capture a whole new audience and sort of start from scratch. Because at the end of the day, I don't think many women knew who we were from 2016 to 2018. So we were really trying to gather customers from the get-go. The thing that worked well for us back then, though, was the cost of acquisition of customers was
ridiculously a lot lower.
Well lower. So that worked in our favor. So the timing of it couldn't have been any better. Looking back at it, obviously, if we did it even earlier, we would be in a way better position right now. But I think we got in at sort of like one of the final stages of when acquisition costs were relatively low, which we were really lucky to get into, and we never sort of stepped back from there. So from 2018, 2019, we built on women's. We sort of parked men's. We left it on the side there. It sort of just kept flowing on and on and on. Because at the end of the day, a guy wants new stuff, but they'll buy, twice a year, and they'll spend big.
Literally.
And they'll buy like
We're all the same, aren't we?
Exactly right. Exactly right. They'll buy like 8 things
Once
twice
they've
a
got
year.
something, that's it. They're just going to stick to that, and they don't need to try anything else. Women are a bit different. They love buying consistently, and they'll try different places.
Exactly right.
Yeah, women was always going to be the place moving forward.
What went into that decision, right? Because that's a big decision. You know, like that's not just we thought we'd go into women and then we went into women. It's kind of like, did you go away and research? Do you think did you look at that and say, hey, this is a massive opportunity? Is this with what we can provide, is this an underserved market? Like, what was the kind of thought process, and how did you come to that decision to kind of really go all in on women at that point?
Yeah, I think back in the day when it was 2016, 2017, there was a lot. The gym industry and the fitness industry was a little bit different. It was very gym bro. There was a bit more Ziz around. I don't know if the listeners will know who he is.
Oh yeah, the king.
Yeah, exactly right. And the gym wear brands were reflective of that environment, and I think that. You had players like Lulu, for example, who are $1 billion company, making really minimal stuff, really high quality stuff though, that would appeal to the masses, the people that don't want to go to the gym and just lift weights and stuff like that. So I think that's where we saw the opportunity, knowing that the women's market was so much bigger than the men's market, and they would buy more often. Coupled with the fact that I think that our brand is very minimal when it comes down to it and very basic, but we focus on delivering a high quality product. I think we had something there that wasn't a differentiator, but we had the fundamentals to make something great in the future.
And the market was big enough, right? Like,
correct.
Kind of like, where my mind goes with that is like Lulu were probably one of these sole players with not much competition back then.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really important lesson that, you don't really look at that in your first 2 years in business. You go, how big's the market? What's the opportunity? How much of that market do we have to capture to really make this a successful, branch in our business, if that makes sense? But, it's easy to say now, looking back, but it's kind of like, that's one of the biggest things when you're looking at something new to go and look at is like, what are the numbers here?
Yeah.
Like, what's the market? What's the potential opportunity?
Yeah, I think especially if it's your first business, like you never really think of it like at that macro level of, okay, what's happening with the markets? And I think I've heard this, you say this in one of the podcasts, in one of your previous podcasts, that you can be one of the slowest in a or something like one of the worst in a growing market, and you're going to do better than some of the best in a declining market. So we were lucky enough to be in that sort of environment. I think also the fact that even in 27 and 18, it was just me and Ben, and we're doing everything, that it was so easy for us to pivot and try something else. And we were always so hungry to keep the brand growing. And, we had friends and family all around us saying, you should maybe try women's. Like, it would be so good on women. It would be so good on women. And yeah, we started that, and it really took off. And when you accompany that with obviously lower acquisition costs and influencer marketing, in my opinion, was even better. But I think right now it's very, very, very saturated, and a lot of people aren't going to listen to someone just because they look good in a product anymore. They got to kind of tell the story, and they got to be able to be a personality. Back then, it's only 4 or 5 years ago, but a girl could look good in the activewear and just say how much they enjoyed it, and it would do really, really well. And I think we were also in that space, and we were fortunate to grow with that. And we've kind of just taken that and continued adding products, adding minimal designs, adding the range, different materials, and that's what we wanted to do, just so then a girl could come in and they could see different pair of tights. Do you want to just chill out? Do you want to do yoga? Do you want to go do some high intensity interval training? So that's what we were trying to build the brand off. And up until 2020, it was really just Ben and I, and we would, just like we're having a conversation now, we're always questioning what we could do to continue growing the brand, and that's how it was. We still do it now, but obviously now we've got a much bigger team. Up until 2020, it was genuinely just us two. Did it all. So I think that was a big factor to our success. So
yeah, I think the market dynamics thing is really interesting, and I mean, like, as I said, I don't think you really think about it early on. Like, you kind of just like, humans are really good at picking things up without actually knowing they're picking them up, if that makes sense. And that kind of comes from that. I think it comes from that question, or that that question that you said before is like, how do we continuously grow the brand? Because it makes you look. And as I said, it's very easy to look back in hindsight and say, yeah, like it was influencer marketing. We got on that bus, we got on this, we got on that. But at the time, you're probably just like, okay, well, we're seeing this working over here, and I think this might work, and maybe we can do this a little bit differently to what they're doing it. But so that's kind of how you pick up. And I think that's what naturally you have to really want to be innovative as an entrepreneur, especially in a startup, because it's like you might try something and it may not work.
Yeah.
And then when it doesn't work, you've got to be going, the next step is, okay, why didn't it work? What do we do now? Kind of thing. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, we definitely had moments like that where we were questioning what we were doing and like, are we stagnating or are we progressing? And I think that's natural in business. Like some days we would go into the Kennett storage or the small warehouses we had, and we were like, wow, we need to change this up because it's getting a little bit stale, or we need to do something different, or we need to approach this from a different angle to keep that growth going. And I think that's what sort of fuels the fire in both of us, because the process is the fun part of business.
Big advantage of ours is we've known each other for basically our whole lives. So, I mean, we're very honest with each other. It's very easy to we flow really well. So in those early stages, if something is not clicking right, I mean, we'll get to the bottom of it pretty quickly. And like, if we don't agree with something that's going on, we can have a disagreement in a very positive way, and we move on and we keep moving and we keep going forward. I think that's really helped us throughout the beginning of the journey.
It's funny. So we were talking about good to great before this, right? Yeah. And one of the concepts in that book is first who, then what. And it talks about first you got to get the right people on the bus, then you decide what you're going to do. And one of the reasons that that's so important is because one of the things that they found the great companies, the companies that were that would outperform the good companies, was that you need to be able to argue, but still have unwavering faith in each other, or like, as in the vision type thing. And the whole idea is like, you need to be able to argue, but there's no bad blood, or you need to be able to argue and disagree and be able to come together on, okay, well, maybe this is the right decision and we're going to keep moving forward. Yeah. And that was one of the kind of key things from the book of what made great companies outperform compared to good companies, and that kind of culture. And it's interesting that you say that, because that's really hard to do, right? Yeah. Like, you guys would probably even see this now, is like, it's easy between you two, but then if you were to bring somebody who may not have that belief system, or maybe hasn't had that kind of open confrontation before into your company, navigating that as founders and managing those relationships, it kind of poses a really cool question, which I'd love to get your take on, is like the difference between hiring the right person and trying to then manage the culture on the back end. How do you guys see that? When you hire, do you guys look and say, okay, we're really looking for a particular type of person, or are we going to place skill set on a higher pedestal and then try to nurture them into our culture and bring them into a culture that potentially can nurture them into to fit, if that makes sense?
I think the answer starts with it depends, and it depends on the role. So to begin with, like, I remember this quote stuck with us. We were reading, I can't remember how, I think someone got us onto a report from Accent Group, who own a lot of the retail, they're a retail giant in Australia. And their quote was, hire on attitude and train on everything else. And that stuck with us. Like, let's just look for people that have the right attitude, that want to be and want to come into work. And a lot of the things we do, they're all processes, they're all trainable. So that was something that we've done, especially with the stores and just the warehousing, the general operations in the warehouse. That was that side of it. Then the other side is what we're learning now, is the creative side, and actually looking at the vision, is trying to get people that come in with experience. Again, obviously they want to come in with culture, but we're learning this process right now, because I mean, we're not perfect, and together we work really well. But sometimes I still think that it's very natural not to want conflict, especially like, I feel like we're big people pleasers. So we don't want to have conflict with any other staff. So that's something that we're learning along the way, is just to be able to, tell someone that, okay, I don't fully disagree. I don't fully agree with you right now. But at the same time, not hurting feelings. So I think we're learning that as we go.
Yeah. I think it was easy between us to like say, nah, I don't like that, or yeah, that's unreal, or whatever, because we were so close. But when you've got external people from all over Melbourne coming into your work environment, and you want to hear everyone out and give them an opportunity to express themselves and push the business forward and give their like little bit of spice into the business as well. Having those tough conversations and telling them, you know, like, we like this, we don't like this, and that confrontation, it's something we continuously try to work on. But we're getting better at it, I would say.
It's a continuous process, right?
Correct.
Yeah, 100%.
But I think that is one, like hiring people with different mindsets is one of the most important things that you can do for your company. I remember we were talking about it last week. Ray Dalio, who is like an absolute guru in the industry.
Principles, huh?
Yeah, the principles. And one of his principles is basically how you should be hiring as many different types of person as possible, and then getting them all in a room together, smashing their heads together, and coming out with the best ideas possible. Because the disagreement is how you're going to get better ideas moving forward. And I think from a brand perspective, getting different perspectives on design or the ways we can push the brand forward, whether that be creatively or operationally, it's super important to us, and it's something we're going to take very seriously moving forward, and we already are. Yeah.
I think a common theme with business in general is the ones that do succeed, from what we've seen, I mean, people around us, is the ones that are self-aware, the ones that can kind of look at themselves and see the big picture and think objectively. They're the ones that will continue to grow. Because if you can't see there's an overarching problem in the business that's hindering that growth, you're just obviously going to stay where you are. And we've seen that theme come about more and more. And the more you read, the more you meet more people, it's that trait that they've got as you get to know them. So that's crucial.
Would you say that, so like you mentioned something before, which I think sparked something in my mind, how you guys are starting to shift the way you're thinking about hiring just a tad by hiring, you know, people that are highly skilled. And, you know, it almost ties into, that was kind of early on in the conversation, but even now you're talking about self-awareness. You know, I think often you can get caught in the trap of, and I think it depends on where you're at in business, right? But being the genius with 1,000 helpers, in a sense. So building your business where you're the creative genius, and then you kind of build people around you to help support the business in the areas that it needs. But I'd be interested to hear from your perspective, did you find that at some point you guys now, and it sounds like that was the case, but you now have to shift your mentality to try bring people in to fill those creative roles, because that's what's going to take the business to the next level again?
Correct. To take the business to the next level, we need to bring people in that are highly skilled and empower them to make decisions. And we're on the road to that stage right now. We're not there. A lot of the decision making and the strategic decision making that goes into EE is still us two, and everything's flowing through us. But we want to get to a destination where it involves people sitting at a table where we're not on, and making super important decisions based on where we can take the brand and stuff like that. And I think that's a work in progress. I think that
I still think it takes time, even if someone is highly skilled, especially when it comes to creatives, to be able to learn and learn what the brand's about.
Exactly.
That's not going to happen overnight. You can't just get someone in who's, I don't know, they might have been hugely successful at another brand or in another space, but they still need to try understand the brand to its core, which we think it's easy, but
we've lived it for
we've
6
lived
years.
It, exactly right, 6-7 years. It's been in our minds every single day. So yeah, it's that process that we're getting better at.
That's my biggest lesson of the last 12 months. Like, I brought Liv in, right, and she was crushing it. She, seen massive growth in the old company that she worked with, and I was like, yeah, she'll come in, we'll be walking the park, we'll crush it from day one, it'll be lights out. And then, it took Liv a good couple of months to just really get a feel of what our brand was. Like, I was managing all the socials for basically all of last year. And I thought she would come in and just pick it up and run. And it was like, nah, it took a little bit to understand the brand, understand kind of the vibe we're going for and the kind of identity that we're creating and so on. And that's a management and a leadership thing, right? Like from my perspective, it was like, I was like, for the first month, I'm like, what's going on? Like, why is this not just seamless and kind of, why aren't we cruising kind of thing? But it did take me a while to kind of sit there and go, okay, no, like you can bring someone in who's highly skilled, who gets it, understands it, but them picking up your brand and understanding it filters into those skills as well and how they leverage them. You need to be able to, I think this is like a leadership thing, right? As a leader, you need to be able to kind of nurture that person through that time and allow them to kind of get their hands on it and start to integrate into the brand as well.
Yeah, so true. You have to give them a sense of direction because we've been there. We've learned that the hard way, that someone comes in and they're kind of just waiting for something to happen. And we now as the leaders, as you say, have to get these people in and give them the path and get them to start thinking in a certain way, which is what we're trying to achieve.
And it's like, you almost, like, I think the lesson I learned out of that was like, you don't want to do that, right? Like, you're like, oh, like I'm hiring now. Yeah. Just pass this to this person and they'll crush it and I can just, I can go and do this thing over here, right? Yeah. And it's just not the case. You still have to give that direction and almost, get behind them and nurture them. And as you said, give them the direction for like, maybe the first, 3 to 6 months and then you get that from them and then they start to take, responsibility. It's a confidence thing, right?
Yeah,
correct.
100%. Yeah. And we've seen that. See, our girlfriends both work in the company and they do an amazing job. And at start, they were like, "You're not giving us any form of routine. No, like what do we do? Yeah, where's the structure?" And obviously now we know that these people need to come in with structure. And then once they've got that and they understand what's needed, they just go. And then you sit back and you realize like, whoa, like it's been 6 to 9 months and like you guys are absolutely killing it and you've blown it out of the park and you're doing things that even we would have been like, shit, fuck, that's an unbelievable idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's massive.
It's almost a target, right? Like, how do we get someone in 9 months? Like I've been thinking about that a lot lately, and just thinking like, okay, the goal is to get somebody to 9 months where they feel confident enough to run and bring those ideas to the table.
Yeah,
100%.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, it's tough. It's not easy.
No.
Like hiring's the hardest thing in the world, I reckon. Yeah. Like in business, there's nothing more complicated,
It sounds easy because everyone thinks that you're just going to delegate tasks to people and it's going to get done. But the nurturing actually involves more of our brain power to actually get the result that we're after in terms of, the vision that we want for the brand. So I think like in the last 6 to 9 months when we've been hiring and the team's growing and stuff like that, that's almost been more mentally demanding on both of us than previously when things would just happen. We'd snap our fingers and make a decision and just do it because we were always doing stuff rather than nurturing other people doing stuff, which is a completely different mindset that you need to have. And it's interesting and we love it. But yeah, that's how we're going to get to the next level at the end of the day. You need as many people as possible, make a huge team, gravitational pool of ideas. The best idea comes out at the end of the day and we push forward. And that's sort of our like little motto for the year, I think.
Goes against the technician side of you though, right?
Yeah.
It's like what got me to where I am now was not going to get me to where we're going. Correct. And it's like, the technician in you kind of feels lazy for doing those kind of things, like nurturing someone, like putting effort and time out of your day into somebody else or into the team and structuring what the team's going to do. What are the leadership things we're going to do this week? What are the things we're going to get to make the team become cohesive and spend time with each other? And that's like so opposite to like where you've come from, because it's like, no, like I've got to do these tasks, this task, this task, this task. Yeah. And it's like we're just shifting that mindset, I reckon, is the biggest challenge.
Yeah, the shifting to the working in the business to the working on the business mindset is the toughest part, because we loved doing it just us two. I mean, we were almost turning over 8 figures and it was genuinely me and Ben and we would do everything and we loved it. Like we genuinely loved it. Long hours, but But
it was a slugfest, but
it
it
wa-
was, it was unbelievable. Like the reward that you felt from
it
it.
was a slugfest.
It was
yeah.
like, yes.
But obviously now we're at that next chapter. We turn the page, and obviously you can't grow much more if you're going to keep doing that. It's impossible. And I still think we do keep it very lean. We have a small teams. You know, we don't have people doing unnecessary things. I think since we've still got that mindset of, okay, people can really take on a lot of responsibility here, and they can do as much as, or they can do hopefully as much as they possibly can, without hopefully thinking, whoa, I've got too much on my plate here. And then that's when we kind of think, all right, well, let's get some more people in. Let's try that. So, well, it's a balancing act, and we'll get better at it. I think we've done a pretty good job so far, though.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a learning process for us at the end of the day. But yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there.
So before we move on to like the next chapter stuff, so I mean, for someone out there who's trying to make their first million, like what advice would you give them? You know, like because I feel like that's something that a lot of people are going to want to know. You know, and getting a business to that point, what advice would you give those people?
Do you want to go?
Yeah, well, you can jump in if you want to, but I would say, sorry. Number one, back yourself, and number two, well, back yourself in general, and number two, don't be afraid to risk it. Not all, but risk 99% of what you have and dump everything that you possibly can into this one venture. A lot of people enter a business or start a business and they're risk averse. I think we were the opposite. We were hungry to see what we could do, and if we were going to fail, we were going to lose basically everything. Our bank accounts were always friggin' zero. We were working at Samsung to fund drops at EE and fund expansion of stock and stuff like that. So I think, when we talk to people that are starting businesses now, not that we're freaking gurus or anything like that, we just say, like, do more. Spend more on advertising, get more customers, buy more stock. Don't be afraid to sort of risk it to get the biscuit at the end of the day, because that's how we did it back in the day when we were lucky because acquisition costs were low. But there was a month which I'll never forget where we spent more money on advertising than we made in revenue. It was about 1 to 1 or 1 to 1.5. So like, let's just say we spent 75 grand on Facebook, but we made 100 grand. Which is highly unprofitable. Like we were moving back, but at the end of the day, we were acquiring customers, and the more customers you acquire, they buy more than once, lifetime value. We were winning in the long run, and we didn't even understand that back then. We were just dumping money in there because we were like, fuck this, we'll just dump money into it.
LTV.
Exactly right, but we didn't even know what that was.
I didn't know what LTV was
True.
until last year.
Yeah, I think I was just like, because you can boost posts and stuff like that, and I was just like boosting a post, and I was like, oh fuck, where's all this money going every day? Like 2-3 grand coming out of the account, and it was crazy. But I think in the end that it wasn't a mistake, but that planning and that ability to risk it all got us customers, which is at the end of the day what you need to succeed, and to grow a community around a brand.
I think for me, what is close to home is if you're trying to make your first million, is to focus on who you can do your venture with, like finding the right person. And we've been fortunate enough to, have each other since we were very young, is to find a person that thinks like you and that you can think like, all right, I basically want to marry this person, and we want to create something together. I think sharing the ups and the downs with someone is so much easier than doing it on your own. And I'm only speaking from a personal standpoint here, because I know that when we've had downs, we've gone through it together. And same thing, we've had really high highs. You can share it with someone, and you've got someone there that's experiencing it all with you. So I think if you're looking to get into business, that is something that we didn't know we were doing it at the time. But I look back, and every single step of the way, it's just been so much better because you can share it with, in our thing, he's my best mate, but it doesn't have to be your best mate. Just find someone that, you can trust and
yeah, I think a lot of people are skeptical and pessimistic on finding a business partner or doing something with someone else and getting them involved. we personally think, I don't know, it's just our experience, but we think that's wrong. And the ability to bounce ideas off someone and have someone there standing by your side when times are tough, it's invaluable. And you end up succeeding, or you have better chance of succeeding by having someone there by your side and going through the tough times with them. Because, you know, there were some times there when, you know, if I was by myself or Paz was by himself, we might not have made the right decision. But because we sort of sat there, worked through it together, we're here now. And then, you know, in the highs, we look at each other and we hug each other and we're like, we made it. You know, we did something really good here. So yeah, I agree with that as well. I agree.
It's about finding the right person.
Right person is very difficult. You need like skill sets that sort of complement each other, but you need to be different, but the same in the same sense as well. Like you need to want the same thing. For example, like, I don't know, we don't really talk about this, but I think Paz he's a very macro person. Like he's thinking big picture. He's always thinking strategy, progression and stuff like that. And I'm thinking that too, but I'm a little bit more anal and articulate about every little minor detail that is going to get us there to our destination. And I think we sort of leverage each other's strengths to an extent to get to that place. Like if there's something that I know that he's just going to excel at, I'm just going to palm it off to him. And I think it's the same in the opposite direction.
Yeah, it's so powerful when, like, I genuinely think that that's what I've got with Liv. Like, Liv's creative, but she's also like a master executor.
Yeah. I'm
not a master executor. I'm a talker. I'm a big picture guy. Yeah. I can tell you the vision and you'll buy it. You know, like that's just me.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm confident in that. But then it's like the micro tasks every day and like, okay, this is the vision, but we need to get this, and this done. And that's Liv. And it's the same thing. Like, you know, I have always found it really difficult to find someone to bring into the company that I think has the opposite skill set, but also shares the same ambition as I do. Whereas it's funny, like since Liv has left her job and come into the business, I finally found like I've got someone like that. Yep. And it's that kind of relationship. And like, you're right. Like, it's like, okay, we're under serious pressure right now, but we can lean on each other and kind of brainstorm ideas and work on this. And even, you know, you've got someone who's complementing that skill set. Whereas previously I was just a macro guy and I was exactly like, right. You know what I mean? So I think that's yeah, it's something that I've experienced only recently that you guys have probably been experiencing for a while as well.
And it's even as simple as positive reinforcement. Like if something bad happens, you turn to each other and you say, "No, we've got this," or like we can work through it together.
We're on the right track.
That is in itself so freaking powerful, and no one can take that away from you. So yeah,
just being positive in general really helps in business because negativity is not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah,
and that's a very common theme about why people can't actually get off the ground. Very negative about everything, and I understand a lot of people going through, you know, shit. Everyone's going through shit.
Especially when you're flying too close to the sun.
Yeah.
You know, like there's times in business where it gets it tight. And it's like there's a lot of pressure and anxiety driven to it, and someone reiterating that and telling you that you shouldn't do this, or, you know, why are you doing this? And you know, kind of that negative mindset doesn't make it any better. It makes it a lot worse.
Exactly right.
Yep.
So you guys, we obviously just had the first million chat, right? But you guys are, you know, beyond that now. And you guys are at a point where I would really love to obviously talk about this and get an insight into kind of where we're at now. You guys seen massive growth throughout 2020. Obviously, you know, on the back of e-com and obviously the pandemic as well. And I'd love to talk through that and I guess open up some of the lessons, some of the things you guys went through, some of the key decisions that you made during that time, but also where you're at right now as well. And you know, obviously some of the things that you guys are thinking through now. So we'll start, let's go from like 2020 and kind of look at, okay, what were the things that took you to the next level?
I think the decision to really double down on expanding the women's range and going with that really helped, and really sticking to that minimal feel that we've got with our pieces really helped kind of facilitate the growth in 2020. And also having such a lean operation, then we kind of were positioned well
to take the opportunity.
So we were so flexible in any way, like we were ready to pivot anywhere. So whether the market was kind of going one way or we saw there were trends somewhere else, it was like Ben would, get some samples, and he would go through, design some stuff, and that's it. And within the space of 6 to 8 weeks, we could have, close to 10,000 pieces at our door. So that was something that really helped us get through that period, because the demand just went through the roof. And
it was keeping up with demand at the end of the day. That was the biggest problem. Like, logistics in general has gone through the roof. It's an absolute shit show at the moment. Like, you're paying, back in the day, I don't know if anyone wants to know this, but like back in the day, you used to pay maybe 1, 2, 3 grand for a container, like coming from, the Port Melbourne from China. Now you're paying 13, 14 grand for a container. So we're pretty lucky that we're in an industry where the margin can support that sort of increased cost, and that's a fixed cost basically, to get a container in. But even so, like, to get a container in back when COVID was so rampant, in what was it, 2020? Or was that the first year? Yeah, 2020. Like, no one knew what was happening. Planes weren't flying in the air if you needed something quickly. China was in full lockdown, which is where we get most of our staff. So we were like, wow, what are we going to do? The lucky thing is that it worked itself out quite quickly, and we were able to get back on track. But for the first 5-6 months of 2020, we were struggling to keep up with demand, because everyone was like wanting active wear, because the only thing you could do in 2020 is go outside and go for a walk with a friend for 1 hour, which is, neither here nor there, or sit on the couch in your loungewear. And we were hitting both of those, which we were incredibly lucky to hit. We were hitting both that person that was watching Netflix 12 hours a day, and we were hitting that person that wanted to go for a walk with their friends and look cool doing it. So at the end of the day, I think that's the main thing we did well in 2020.
Logistically, how do you manage that, right? So what changed for you guys logistically? Because you've seen a massive influx of demand, and I don't know if you listened last week, but I have a similar kind of belief system as to what Jai talked about. He talked about growth drivers and growth enablers. You guys would have quickly found that you were driving a lot of growth because you got on the back of, obviously, and made the pivot. But then you also, a lot has to change. Like, I'm assuming that you guys would have to upgrade factories and kind of find space and logistically get ahead and hire and do all these kind of things. Like, can you give us a bit of insight into that? Because I feel like that would have been just as important as obviously the pivot itself.
The storage and warehousing is a constant discussion that we genuinely, for the last 3 years, still trying to figure out. In 2020, when we experienced that growth, we moved into the end of 2019, we had moved into a 1,000 square meter facility. At the end of 2020, we had another one of those. So we've got two. We're based just off near the Melbourne airport, so we've got two about 2 minutes away. And the constant process of managing inflow of stock coming inbound, and then and obviously making sure that outbound you're fulfilling all the orders every day was something that we had to get right in 2020. And that's when we got a robust warehouse management system. They're based in the UK, and they once you do all the onboarding and stuff, you have to then basically build the layout of your warehouse, and you have your locations of bulk locations and pick locations, and we had to build that all of 2020. So I remember every day it would be you work, and then 7 p.m. we would have calls from the UK teaching us about the system, and that looking back, was lucky we made the decision when we did, because it helped us facilitate all this growth. We wouldn't be able to be doing retail if we didn't have that. We wouldn't be able to be shipping close to 1,000 orders a day if we didn't have that. Like that process that we made, and the organization that we got between the two warehouses, which again has challenges in itself, to be able to get stock that needs to be replenished on a daily basis to the main warehouse. It has its deficiencies, but we're managing. Obviously, it's not the end goal. We do have some pretty big plans in the works at the moment, but it's definitely sorted us out over the last 2 years.
Yeah. I think in 2019, if you look back at it, 2019, there was a mind map, like a Sherlock Holmes mind map of the warehouse in both of our minds, and whoever we got in to help us, we would teach them the mind map. They were walking around. There were little locations, like let's just say AO1 or AO2, and then everyone would have to memorize what was in that location based on what Shopify
It was a
told us
shambles.
to pick. It was a shambles. So investing in the infrastructure, which is technology, which is allows you to basically get more people in and have a less spend less time training people to do the operational side of the business was a complete game changer for us, because by the end of 2020 at Black Friday, which is in November 2020, we probably had 15, 20 people working for those 2 or 3 weeks. There would be absolutely no chance of us training 15 to 20 people to learn a system where it had no flow to it, and it was just so static, and you just needed to remember everything in your head.
That's crazy. So, because you guys would be doing like triple, quadruple during those times, wouldn't you?
More. It's the influx of orders you get during those periods is crazy. Like sometimes it really takes over a week to actually fulfill orders from the first day, because that space is such, it's massive. It still blows my mind every single time we have a Black Friday or an end of financial year, because you're like, whoa, like you thought last year was crazy and it just gets crazier. So what we've gotten better at is kind of budgeting and knowing how many people we need to get in, how many locations we need to have to be able to fulfill all the SKUs that we have, because we've got over 7,000 different SKUs. They need to be inside, they need to be in the pick face for these orders to go out. And that's a constant discussion. It's genuinely a constant discussion. And
as you continue to grow, I think just technology and leveraging technology is super important. Manual work and using manual input is going to get you so much output, whereas using technology and leveraging these sorts of programs like Shopify, like our warehouse management system, it takes you to the next level, and you can experience exponential growth. And in terms of Black Friday, where the terminology is like you need to flex up, like you need to flex up your operations, because you might be making 10 grand on a day where it's not Black Friday, but you're making 200 grand on the Black Friday itself. Like who's going to come in and fulfill all of those orders in a timely manner? Like it's just ridiculous. And that's a challenge for the industry moving forward, how you can sort of flatten out the curve so you're not having to flex up that much. Like it's all well and good having a day where you're like doing really well, but it's really hard operationally. And at the end of the day, the customer experience, you want it to be as good as if they ordered it on a day where they're going to get their order the next day. So it's a challenge going forward to bring up, normal days, and like the sale periods are always going to be massive, but the flex up is less of a flex up.
We've done that quite well, because you need to be able to offer a better experience than competitors, and shipping times is something that obviously is second to none. The customer wants to be able to get their stuff next day. And it's very easy in those periods to say, there's a bit of a delay, but to be able to have it the day after you've ordered, you're not going to lose those customers.
So I'm kind of trying to... what I'm seeing here is that there's obviously a massive emphasis or even connection between cash flow and strategy for you guys, right? Like thinking about, and strategy is obviously based on, like you guys put a massive emphasis on customer experience, it seems, and try to use that as like the differentiating factor.
Yep.
And then obviously capital and resources go towards doing that.
Yep.
And that's where obviously the logistics side for you guys would become really, really important, and why you're investing there. How much has, and you don't have to go into details or anything like that, but how much has Cashflow played a massive, massive role, and being obviously as you expand in kind of allowing you guys to, or allowing that expansion in itself, and because I feel like, at the level that you guys are at now, like that would be almost that would be so important for allowing that growth to actually occur, because you guys have demand coming in, but allowing that growth to actually occur would be so pivotal.
So when you have a product, you need to buy the product and then sell the product. Ideally, you would buy the product, get credit terms, sell the product, and then pay your supplier back. But that's not how the industry works for the most part. So you need to buy the product. It's like a vacuum of cash. Like you want to buy 1,000 t-shirts, cool. Pay X amount of dollars up front before you get the product and start selling the product. So cash out is huge, but you just need to basically soak everything up to keep growth. And that's sort of like the mindset that we've had, where we're not afraid to just insert cash into that sort of retained earnings back in. Like, we're not taking anything out. We're just buying and buying and buying and expanding the amount of SKUs that we had. Like, we've probably added 6,000 SKUs in the last 2 years, for example. And that's been massive.
I definitely think that at the beginning was much harder to manage cash flow than what it is now. As you get a bit bigger, the banks will be able to offer different sort of facilities for you. But back then, I remember, because even we were a 7-figure business, and we were still only taking out $100 a week because we were so fixated on this vision of where we could be, that what really mattered to us is just, let's get these new pieces. We know we need to expand the range. We know we need to continuously investing. And, we might have ordered 1,000 the first order, but we need to order 2,000 to 3,000 to facilitate the continuous growth that we're seeing over the last 12 to 18 months. So that part was the hardest, and I think that's obviously carried over to how we can manage cash flow now, because once you're in that period of only having $100, and you've been very frugal with the way you live your personal life, but also how you're trying to manage the money coming in and out of the business, and that's you hear this with everyone, like.
I'm just laughing. I'll tell you a story after this. But keep going. It's fucking hilarious.
You see it. You see it with every business. And once you learn those skills, they don't leave you. Like, you've got them with you. You know what it takes. You know what you have to do. So yeah, I'm fortunate that we went through those kind of hard times, and here we are.
It's what no one sees, right? Like, I'm laughing. Like, me and Liv, like, it's a group joke amongst like the group of friends, because Liv will always say, like, we call it fun money.
Yeah.
Because like, we are like budgeting tight at the moment, because we've got 2 startups. Like, Liv's got her own company that she's trying to build. I'm trying to build this. Most of the money, like, you don't pull money out.
You never pull money out.
In a startup, you don't. Like, it stays in there. And, I'm lucky enough that I have another company that generates income for myself. But, that's what nobody sees. No. Like we're living on, like, outside of bills, like $150, $200 a week.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we call fun money. And that's like, Lived like, fucking give me more fun money, would ya? Like, and it's like the inside joke, but like, that's a serious thing that in business nobody sees. Like, they see the end result, they see the product, they see the demand, they see the followings going up. For us, they see the content, and automatically they think there's success there, right? Because it's like, oh, like, it's working. But it's like, what you don't see in the background is the fact that you're living on peanuts because you're trying to grow this thing that you're just super passionate about.
True.
True. On the front end, it may look like you're doing really, really well, but because you're in such a fertile stage of the business, and it involves so much cash to get to that next level, you want to bet everything on it, which means that your life, personal life.
Which is why the best time to try start a business is when you're young and you're living at home. You've got no overheads. You can genuinely risk it all. And we were the prime example of that. We both lived at home, and we were so happy to put our life savings into Elite 11, because at the end of the day, we thought, well, we're going to be enjoying what we're doing right now. Like, we're spending time together. Let's just go for it. And that's, I'm glad we had that mindset, and tell anyone that wants to start business to have that same mindset.
And I think a lot of people don't get into business because of the standards that are set by society as well, around like buying a house and doing all that. It's like, well, like, I think it's funny, I've been talking about this a little bit lately, like, the property people will always come for you, right? They'll tell you, buy a house early, do all that. But it's like, sometimes to get a business off the ground, like, you might be able to save and you might buy your house first and then you go into business and whatever. But it's okay to go all in on a business and do that for 5 to 10 years.
Yep.
And then go and enjoy those luxuries. Like, it's about understanding what you want. But I feel like that sometimes can catch a lot of people off guard. Is like, oh, you should have a house by the time you're 26 or 27 or 28. And although, I'm a big property investor, it's like, no, like, sometimes it's okay to not do that and put everything you possibly can into a business to get that off the ground.
Yeah.
And also, I think a lot of,
a
lot of people see another thing, they see the image of the successful entrepreneur, and they want that, and they see, they might be driving around a nice car, and they've got fancy clothes, that a lot of people get fixated with that image, but they don't actually see the process of what it actually takes to get there is something that a lot of people getting into business just for the wrong reason. Like obviously, at the end of the day is to make money, but
You got to eat shit for at least 5 years.
you got to. And we loved eating shit. We were loving it.
There's this Chinese place near our houses, and they offer $10 lunch meals. So we'd stock up on those, eat once a day, apart from dinner at home. And then if we were ever going out to eat, even if I was taking the missus anywhere, it would be this place because it was $20. And I was like, fuck, this is $20. I could do that 5 times a week and I'm sweet.
I'm a fucking banh mi man. You know
Exactly
what?
right.
They're $8.
Exactly right. 20% less.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to the housing thing, I think that when you buy, if you're really young and you're buying a house, you're basically marrying yourself to the idea of having this house, rather than marrying yourself to an idea or a business. Like we basically entered and did Elite 11, and we were marrying ourselves to the idea of creating a brand to see future cash flow come back to us. So in a way, like at the bottom line, it's a different investment. But a couple of guys that have sort of made it in the business world have basically said, sweet, one thing that can really accelerate your wealth in general is creating something that can bring cash flow in to then buy assets that you can hold, that then generate more wealth. The consensus of buying a house as soon as possible and just having
Sitting
that
on a
house,
house,
like
it
what's
doesn't make sense.
what's that going to do? It's not going to give you freaking any cash flow. If anything, it's negatively geared, and you're actually paying money to have that asset. At the end of the day, not saying that's a bad thing, but we decided to go down the road of building something that would then. And we didn't even think about it like that when we started it. We were just like, fuck, we just want to create something. And we've just been lucky to get to this stage in business where we can look back and say, wow, I guess that was a good idea.
How are you guys seeing it now then, right? So like more of on a market dynamics kind of macro perspective. I heard you guys mention that you have an app now, so I'd love to hear about that. And also kind of what you guys see as like the next opportunity for you guys, but in general, like in how you're seeing, the business world play out.
Yeah, so I think as a macro level, you see, especially when you're looking at digital marketing, the cost to acquire customers is getting higher and higher, and people spending more emphasis to lifetime customer value. So what we're trying to do moving forward is obviously be able to create a sort of ecosystem with the app, with the stores, with online, and all the marketing's the same. When the campaigns come out, the campaign has a similar has a feel to it, has a sort of story that we're trying to tell. So to continue to progress, we think that the ones that are going to move forward are the ones that can differentiate themselves in a way and be able to tell their story. So to get to the next level and to continue growing, we think that that's the way to go. So we're 100% in on that with that process, and you see it, like there's a lot of brands that are in the space, and the biggest differentiator is, okay, well, you need to have that point of difference. And for us, I think we've established that point of difference, and it's now to continue working on that.
Yeah, I think there's two things that like the whole industry knows, and it's just fact. Like we can talk about it, but everyone knows it in the industry, and there's acquisition, which is getting new customers, and then there's retention, which is retaining customers that are already Elite 11 customers. And going forward, brands that will succeed are the brands that once they acquire a customer, their retention level is high. Whether that be establishing a community, getting them involved in the direction of the brand and stuff like that. Like these are the sorts of things that will differentiate the big boys and the smaller players, or the good and the great businesses at the end of the day.
Super interesting. I love that. I even think that we're in a world where you can, like, even if I think about our business, we're trying to do it the opposite way. We're going to be a marketing machine before we sell a product. But once we sell a product, we won't lose it because these people are already so invested into our brand. And I think that kind of talks to what you guys are trying to do now. And I think it almost talks, if you think about it, like we've talked about it, like this could almost be the reaction to the current ecosystem, right? Acquisition costs go high, so the emphasis naturally has to go, well, it's going to be much easier for us to keep a customer than it is to acquire a new one, and cheaper. So I think it's interesting that the market dynamics almost reacts to the ecosystem that is, and I mean, that's an entrepreneur's mind, right? Like we shift to kind of okay, well, what's going on right now, and how do we fix this problem that we're facing?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
And what I've seen is the most successful entrepreneurs that I've met is they're so fixated on the problems. It's the problems. It's not the idea that they have. It's genuinely the problem that's in front of them to be able to get this idea off the ground or get to the next level. And I think that's what we kind of get to. We get to the problem, and obviously try to solve the problem. And I've heard of people just being so obsessed with trying to get this problem off the ground, and they're successful just because of that.
Yeah, you rub your hands together, right? When something doesn't work, it's kind of like, okay, all
Let's do
hands
it.
on deck, let's go.
Yeah.
Awesome. So to finish off the podcast, we have Quickfire. So you guys have listened, so you may understand, but I always have to preface because like people don't know how to answer.
Yeah.
You guys just free reign. If you want to talk for a long time, you can. If you want to bounce off each other, you can. Totally up to you guys. Don't feel you need to cut it off short. And I'll give you both a chance to answer as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so one piece of advice for people starting out in business.
Do you want to go first?
You can go. The same thing as making your first $1 million. Back yourself and don't be scared to be hungry for risk. Don't be risk averse, and be willing to bet everything on it at the end of the day, because that's that feeling of not uncomfortable, but that feeling of like it's fight or flight risk, where like you're betting everything on it, and if it fails, like I'm done here. That actually excels you even more to be successful. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I would say don't care what other people think, because it's very easy to just think about, when you're younger especially, is to worry about what all your mates are going to think and what your family and stuff. It's just go fucking do it. Like, don't worry about what these people say, because if you're going to care about what these people say, like, you're not going to do anything. And I even would say that to myself, because we thought we were pretty good at that. I think we could have taken that to another level, and we could have done even more than what we've done today.
Yeah,
that's I mean, that's preach. Like that's fucking the hardest part, especially early on. Like you are gonna cop a lot of flack, and whether it's from family because you're not seeing everyone as much as you need to see them.
Yeah.
Or like you want to try to improve that, but it's like that's gonna come. Because whether it's friends, because it's the same thing, like people don't understand, they don't get why you're doing what you're doing, and that's just the reality of it. But I think if you can block that out and just stay driven towards that mission, and like when you have it kind of comes back to that relationship thing. When you've got a relationship and you can lean on someone, where you can like, nah, I'm in this with someone, or even just your team in general.
Exactly
I think
right.
that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. I saw Gary Vee actually said that. He's like, well, it's like in high school when you've got a pimple. You're so fixated on your pimple, but everyone else is so fixated on their own pimple that like they don't really notice your pimple. So like, if you take that same concept and you apply that to starting a business or trying anything in life, you get far.
That's so fucking true. The pimples were the worst back in the day, bro.
The pimples, the acne.
Half an hour looking in the mirror before you went to school, and then you just go, nah, you got to do it.
Even worse.
You walk through in the schoolyard, bro, and you're just like stressing.
Oh,
Worst. Okay, so what's the most important trait that a founder must have, and why?
I would say belief is one, but we just talked about belief.
Confidence.
Belief and confidence. I think going back to what we were previously talking about, there's a difference between self-confidence and arrogance. So some people, like when you're an external person and you're looking at someone and they might be like super confident in their idea, and you would perceive that as arrogance. But at the end of the day, they're just super confident in their idea and they believe in themselves. And we had one guy that we met, and he's sort of like a mentor for us now. And I first met him, I'm like, wow, this guy is freaking full on. But he was so confident in himself, confident in what we were doing, that I backed the shit out of him now. Like, I'm like, wow, this guy's my guy.
Yeah, but you realise he's actually not arrogant at all, because we know nothing about his business, and we would come up with little tips, and he takes everything in.
Agreed. So yeah, like when you're young, you may think that doing stuff will affect the perception and how people perceive you. And having that belief and that self-confidence, like for example, if we had more self-confidence back in the day, we might have started a podcast in conjunction with EE, but maybe instead we were sort of like thinking, you know, like, oh, what are people going to think if we freaking start a podcast and start talking shit? In hindsight, that would have been a great idea. Now I'm saying it, but yeah, like that self-confidence and that belief goes a long way, I think.
Yeah. Another one, like, is just pretty generic, is resilience. I think when people, they get their first fail or they realize they fucked up, the people that are resilient are the ones that, like, that they don't fail. Like, they're not scared to continuously fail. It's almost like, you know, I'm going to pitch a ball at you 1,000 times. You're not going to hit all of them, but that one that you do hit is going to be the success. If you know that, all right, there's 1,000 of them coming, I'm going to hit one eventually, you're going to keep going. It's obviously resilience to be able to break through that first or two couple failures and keep going.
Yeah, I honestly think business is one of those things, is like, who can fucking withstand the longest.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's as simple as that. Like, everybody goes through the same shit. We all talk about it. But I think a lot of the time it's like your ability to not only just cop the failures, but actually find a way, right? Like, that's the thing, is like a lot of people struggle because they think once you fail, that's it.
Exactly.
Whereas I feel like a lot of the time it's like, no, I failed, but now I'm going to find a way to work around this. You know, like I'm sure you guys have stories of times where you couldn't pay a bill or you couldn't do this and you couldn't do that. And it's like, fucking somehow you just find a way.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like those are the kind of times where I wish people knew that, is like, think outside the square, think about how you can find a way to make this failure and turn it around and even just get through it so that you can just survive. Because if you just survive, it's just another day in business that you get another opportunity. And that's a lot of the time people don't think that, because maybe it is a confidence thing. I don't know. Yeah. But that's my wish for everybody, is like, you know, I'm lucky enough to sit where I am purely because when fucking flew too close to the sun, that I just didn't give up, and instead of thinking I'm done, I just found a way. Yeah. You know, and I think that's important as well.
You should mentor people.
And
couldn't agree more.
Like, we do a little bit, right? We do a little bit, like we all do at times, right?
Yeah.
But another thing that you said, which I think was important, is like, and I think this is that self-awareness piece in business, is like, you can often find someone arrogant, but you only truly, or at some, and I think this is that self-awareness piece, is you realize that you thinking they're arrogant is actually more of a reflection on yourself
Exactly.
than what it is. And it's like Jake Paul, you know, like, I fucking think he's the perfect example for this. He's like, I fucking hated that guy for so long until I started to get him. And then I was like, I fucking respect the hell out of this dude.
Couldn't agree more.
And I was like, I respect
both the Paul brothers. I was the same. I hated both of them, and now you see what they're doing and what they're accomplishing, and you're like, fuck, these guys had a fucking vision, and they've gone and done it.
It's like the Nelk boys as well. I don't know if you follow those guys.
Yeah.
I was like, at the start, I was like, fucking brats. Like, who are these guys? And now I'm just like, fuck, you know? And I think as a business owner, like, you respect someone else's hustle once you remove those goggles and realize that, hey, well, maybe I think Jake Paul's a fuckwit because I'm reflecting on what I'm not doing that he's doing, like putting himself out there like that.
Exactly right.
To get forward. And I'm just like, as soon as I realized that, it's like, I think that self-awareness piece in business is like one of the superpowers. That's the Gary Vee thing, right? It's that self-awareness piece. It's that is the superpower. And I think you can learn a lot from your reactions to other people's businesses. Yep. You know, if you feel like you're getting jealous, or why don't I have this, or why are they successful and I'm not? That self-awareness piece of reflecting and actually paying respect to that person and learning from them, even if they're your competitor, is just such a game changer. Yeah. On an individual level.
Exactly right. And that's why I was saying, when you haven't experienced these things and you're basically doing a startup, you don't know these things. So like, your perception of everything around you is completely different. When you've been through the weeds and dragged yourself through tough times, and you see other people that have also done it and you can relate to them, you're like, fuck, this isn't arrogance, this is just self-belief. And you just back everyone that sort of like gets to that position. And as business owners, we want everyone to sort of back themselves and also get to this place where, you know, you can achieve personal success.
You realize it's the only way.
Yeah. exactly right.
Like you realize it's through or quit, right? It's like it's the only way. If you don't have that crazy self-belief, that's when the doubt comes in those negative times or those times that are tough. You've got to have that relentless drive. You've got to have that relentless belief, because if you don't, the second something goes wrong, that doubt's going to creep in and it's going to fucking eat you.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more.
It's going to take your soul and it's going to fucking crush you.
Yeah, it's gonna drag you down into the pits where you can't get out, and that's not a place that anyone wants to be in.
100%. So what advice would you give your 20-year-old selves?
Do women's earlier. When did we do women's?
We were what?
That's very businessy. Like that's very specific to our business. But yeah, I guess you could extrapolate that out into try new things earlier, and don't be afraid to be uncomfortable earlier, or as soon as you have the resources or the willpower to do it, do it. Don't wait and and ah about it and have too many conversations and talk yourself out of doing stuff. Just go for it. Because there was a time there during that stage of when we dropped it in 2018, that 6 months, and you're bouncing off ideas. Some people are saying, like, focus on what you're good at, don't expand. Like that's not a good mentality. Expand, go into all aspects, try and do as many things as possible. Obviously in your sphere, like don't freaking start 10 businesses at once where you can't actually sustain them all. Yeah. But like don't be afraid to try new things within your sphere of influence, I guess.
Yeah. I think don't be scared to trust your gut. I know it's a bit corny, but sometimes you get a lot of noise coming, but just trust what you're doing and what you feel is right is actually right. I think I mean, if I trusted my gut earlier, I would have left uni earlier and gone balls deep on Elite 11 even earlier. But obviously, you got parents and stuff saying, no, finish uni. I had to lie to my grandmother and say, I finished uni, because it would have broken her heart if I told her I left uni. But
I got
rampaged.
I got rampaged for leaving uni. And then it's funny, I was sitting in the car with my dad the other day, we were driving the footy, and he goes, so like, I try to explain it to people, but what exactly do you do? You know what I mean? And it's kind of like that. I think a big part of it is if you're not following what your gut says, you're gonna have a really tough time following through on things. Yep. Like I think you should always follow your gut, even if it's wrong, because if you're not following your gut, you're not doing what's true to yourself. Exactly. And then it's just it's that doubt that will creep in again. It's like I should have done this, I should have done that type mentality.
Yep.
Okay, so this is a bit of a different one. Last one. Who do you look up to in business and why?
For me, it's easy. It's Elon Musk, and I'd recommend anyone who hasn't read his biography to go and read it, because everything we've been talking about, he's experienced it all. And obviously what he's doing with all his businesses. I think the boys from Frontrunner, one of them mentioned that they liked Elon Musk as well. So
if anyone knows Elon Musk and studies him, microscopic lens. He knows a lot about it.
I'm the same. I've read the book. Have you seen his new one that's coming out?
No.
New book. New book about Elon. It's more about Tesla, SpaceX. I haven't read it yet, but I've seen it.
Great, Elon. There you go.
There you go. There's two.
Unreal. I don't know about business mind, but I think I just have to say my dad. Like my dad taught me the principles of being a good person, number one, or like giving me the ingredients to being a good person and the ingredients to believing in myself. And I look up to him and I still idolize him and what he does and what he does for people as well. So yeah, I don't need to look too far from home to see someone that, if I was half as good a man as him, I would be pretty proud of myself.
On that point of kindness, I do think, and I don't know how we haven't touched on this earlier, but being kind will actually make things happen for you. Like I think Ben is an incredibly kind person. I try my best to be a good person myself, and we have people will back you if you're kind to them. Like we genuinely do care about a lot of our employees and all of our employees, and we care about what the customers think. So like that kindness, it will come back and you'll get good karma for it. And I do think a lot of our success has come from just us, being kind. It's very not stereotypical business. You need to be cutthroat, but we think that a lot of our growth has come from just being kind to people and kind to anyone.
100%.
Don't burn bridges.
I think it's a necessity. I mean, you're right, because at some point, I feel like we're in a different dynamic now with that. I think the world's just in a different place, and I think the best way to influence people is to lean in to them and help influence them and help them feel good about themselves, and that's kindness 101. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting yourself. Like I got two mentors, or two people that I look up to, my mum and Elon. So it's interesting. Like they're kind of my two.
There's the dynamic.
Yeah, it's like my mum's the same. Like I just learned. So I think back, like my mum was a single mum from the age of 4, worked her ass off, full-time job, 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. at night, come home, cook dinner. And I just go, she was still the nicest person in the world through all of that.
Yeah.
And I just think like I learned lessons, she taught me a lot, but not through that, but through looking back at what she did and my memories of her as a child and drawing on those now. And then Elon's just the fucking man.
He's a man.
He's the man.
Put those two together and you're in good stead.
We could do a freaking podcast on Elon.
Yeah.
We would fanboy. I reckon these would be 2 hours. I reckon we could do a podcast every week for a year and still not get sick of it.
Honestly.
Awesome. Let's give. So where can everybody find you guys? Instagram, everything. Yourselves personally. I want you guys to shout yourselves out as well in terms of where they can find you and where they can follow you.
DM us on Instagram personally.
My name's Ben Martiniello and
Sandro Paz.
And then Elite 11 Sporting is our handle on Instagram. That's the place. Elite 11 Sporting on TikTok as well, and elite11sporting.com is if you want to check us out and find out more about our story.
Amazing. Congratulations to you two on the success so far. You deserve it. And it's exciting to that conversation's downstairs that you're nowhere near the finish line. So it's exciting to see what's going to come, and everybody make sure you keep an eye out because two great dudes, like genuinely after meeting you guys, really good people, and great business minds. So, definitely, keep an eye on what they're doing and support it as well, guys. Thanks, really, Carl. To everyone else as well, Tomato, thanks for putting the episode together, my brother, once again. To everyone listening, and again, I say this every week, but we get more and more support every week. So a big thanks to you guys. We don't get to do this without your support, so just really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next week.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.